Close your eyes for just 3 seconds. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a cliff, and below you lies not just your own fate, but the survival of every person you've ever loved. One word from your lips could save them all, or seal their doom forever. That's exactly where a young woman named Esther found herself over 2.5 millennia ago, holding the weight of an entire nation's future in her trembling hands. You know that feeling when you're about to speak up about something that matters, but your heart pounds so hard you can barely breathe? When you know that staying silent might be safer, but speaking could change everything? Esther knew that feeling better than anyone, because she was about to make a choice that would echo through history books for thousands of years. Picture this: the most powerful empire the world had ever seen, stretching from the bustling markets of India to the sun-baked shores of Ethiopia. At its heart sat King Ahasuerus, ruler of 128 provinces, a man whose single decree could reshape the lives of millions. But even kings make mistakes, and this king was about to make one that would nearly erase an entire people from existence. Here's what most people don't realize about power. It's not just about who sits on the throne. It's about who whispers in the king's ear when the palace grows quiet, who catches his attention when his mind wanders, who he trusts when the weight of decisions becomes unbearable. And sometimes, just sometimes, that person is someone nobody expects. Someone who started as an outsider, someone who had to hide her true identity just to survive. Esther wasn't born into royalty. She wasn't raised in marble halls or taught the subtle art of court politics from childhood. She was an orphan, raised by her older cousin Mordecai after losing her parents at a tender age. Think about that for a moment. This woman, who would one day hold the fate of nations in her hands, started life with nothing but the love of a relative who chose to see potential where others might have seen just another mouth to feed. But here's where the story gets interesting, where destiny starts weaving its invisible threads. When Queen Vashti refused the king's command to display herself before his drunken guests, a moment of defiance that cost her everything, the kingdom suddenly needed a new queen. Not just any woman would do. They needed someone beautiful enough to capture a king's heart, wise enough to navigate the treacherous waters of palace life, and strong enough to bear the weight of a crown. Take a breath and imagine being chosen from thousands of women, plucked from obscurity and thrust into a world where every glance carries meaning, where every word could be your last, where you must hide the very essence of who you are just to stay alive. Because that's exactly what Esther had to do. She couldn't reveal that she was Jewish, not in a world where being different often meant being dead. For several years, she played her part perfectly. The beautiful queen, the king's beloved, living in luxury while keeping her deepest secret locked away. But you know how life works, don't you? Just when you think you've found your safe space, just when you think you can finally breathe easy, everything changes in a single moment. Enter Haman, a man whose ego was matched only by his cruelty, whose thirst for honor would drive him to attempt genocide. When Mordecai refused to bow down to him, Haman's rage didn't stop at one man. Oh no, his twisted mind conceived something far more horrific. If one Jew would not honor him, then every Jew in the kingdom would pay the ultimate price. Can you feel the weight of that moment? Picture Esther receiving word that her people, every man, woman, and child who shared her heritage, had been marked for death. That in just 11 months, soldiers would go from house to house, carrying out a massacre that would make the earth itself weep. And she, sitting in her palace, wearing her crown, might be the only person in the entire empire with any chance of stopping it.
But here's the catch that makes your stomach drop. Approaching the king without being summoned was punishable by death. Even queens weren't immune to this law. Even the woman who shared his bed, who wore his ring, who had won his heart, could be executed for the simple act of walking into his presence uninvited. The only exception? If he extended his golden scepter, granting mercy to the uninvited visitor. Now, pause right here and really feel this with me. You're holding the lives of hundreds of thousands in your hands, but taking action means you might die before you can even speak the words that could save them. This isn't a movie where the hero always survives. This was real life, where kings had absolute power and even love couldn't guarantee mercy. This is where I need you to really connect with this story, because I bet you've faced moments where you had to choose between your comfort and doing what's right. Maybe not life or death situations, but moments where speaking up could cost you something precious. What would you have done in Esther's place? Would you have stayed silent in your golden cage, or risked everything for people who might never even know your name?
If you're finding this story as gripping as I am, and you want to dive deeper into these ancient tales that still speak to our hearts today, hit that subscribe button right now. And here's something I'm curious about. Drop a comment and tell me about a time when you had to choose between safety and standing up for what's right. I read every single comment, and I genuinely want to know what courage looks like in your life, because that's what this is really about. The courage that lives inside all of us, waiting for its moment to shine. Esther's moment came when Mordecai sent her a message that would change everything. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. For such a time as this. Let those words sink into your soul for a moment. Sometimes we spend so much time wondering why we're where we are, why we've been given certain opportunities, certain platforms, certain voices. But what if? What if everything you've experienced, every door that's opened, every skill you've developed has been preparing you for a moment that's coming, a moment when your voice will be exactly what the world needs to hear? Esther made her choice with words that still give me chills. I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. But she didn't go in recklessly. She asked for 3 days of fasting and prayer, understanding that some battles require more than courage, they require divine intervention. When those 3 days ended, Esther dressed in her royal robes and walked into the king's court. Picture that walk. Each step could be her last. Each breath might be her final one. The courtiers fell silent. The king looked up, and in that moment that stretched like eternity, he extended his golden scepter. But Esther's brilliance wasn't just in her courage, it was in her strategy. Instead of immediately revealing Haman's plot, she invited both the king and Haman to a private banquet. Then, at that banquet, she invited them to another one the following day. She understood something profound about human nature. Curiosity is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. The king spent 2 whole days wondering what his beloved queen wanted to tell him. At the second banquet, with wine flowing and the atmosphere perfect, Esther finally revealed her secret. She was Jewish, and Haman had manipulated the king into signing a death warrant for her and all her people. The revelation didn't just shock the king, it shattered him. The woman he loved, the queen he cherished, belonged to the very people he had unknowingly condemned to death. The king's rage at being deceived was swift and absolute. Haman, who had built a 75-foot gallows to hang Mordecai, found himself executed on the very structure he had constructed for another man's death. But here's what's truly remarkable. The original decree couldn't be reversed because Persian law was immutable. So instead, a new decree was issued.
giving the Jews the right to defend themselves and fight back against anyone who tried to harm them. The day that was meant to be a massacre became a day of victory. The people who were supposed to be victims became victorious. And it all happened because one woman decided that her comfort mattered less than justice, that her safety mattered less than saving lives, that her secret mattered less than her people's survival.
Think about the ripple effects of that single act of courage. Because Esther chose to risk everything, the Jewish people survived. And because they survived, they preserved their faith, their traditions, their stories. Without Esther's courage, there might have been no Jewish people to give birth to the prophets, no Jewish culture to influence the world, no Jewish contributions to science, philosophy, medicine, and arts that have enriched humanity for millennia. But here's what moves me most about this story. Esther didn't start out brave. She started out scared, hiding who she was, trying to blend in and stay safe. Courage wasn't her natural state. It was her conscious choice. She felt the fear and chose to act anyway. She counted the cost and decided that some things are worth dying for. You and I might not face the threat of execution for speaking up, but we all face moments when we must choose between comfort and courage, between hiding and standing up, between playing it safe and risking everything for what we know is right. Esther's story reminds us that sometimes the most ordinary people are placed in extraordinary circumstances, not by accident, but for a purpose we might not understand until the moment arrives. The festival of Purim, celebrated by Jewish people around the world every year, commemorates Esther's courage and the deliverance that followed. It's a reminder that even when things look hopeless, even when the odds seem impossible, even when you feel completely powerless, sometimes one voice raised at the right moment can change the entire course of history. So as we close this incredible journey through Esther's story, I want to leave you with this thought. You might be exactly where you are, with exactly the influence you have, with exactly the voice you've been given for such a time as this. Your moment might be coming, not to save a nation perhaps, but to save someone's day, someone's hope, someone's future. And when that moment comes, I hope you'll remember the young woman who walked into a king's court knowing she might die, but believing that some things are worth the risk.
Before you go, I want you to know that this community we're building here isn't just about ancient stories. It's about how these timeless truths connect to your life today. If this story stirred something in your heart, if it reminded you of your own strength, if it gave you hope for your own moment of courage, please subscribe and become part of our family. Share your own stories of courage in the comments, the time you spoke up when others stayed silent, the moment you chose to act despite your fear, or even the time you wish you had been braver. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this video reminded you that you're stronger than you think, that your voice matters more than you know, that you might be here for such a time as this, hit that like button and let me know what Esther's courage taught you about your own. Because that's what we're really talking about here. Not just ancient history, but the hero's journey that we're all on, the courage that we all carry, and the moments that are waiting for us to step up and change the world, one brave choice at a time.